Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. We've started teaching a little bit from a book that I really felt led of the Lord to write about unconditional eternal security. Is it scriptural? By Pastor Stephen Waldron. You can get this off Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Even if you'll put it in our Facebook, we'll get you the book somehow. So we're just going to go through this book about this. I've written 7 books, 5 published, and I've written actually more than 7, some in the process of getting published. But this is such a subject we get here on the channel, and especially where I live down in South Georgia, 71% of Georgians identify as Baptist or something like that, which I love Baptist. I grew up Baptist. My whole family basically Baptist. But we're going to look at some things. So I'm on page 1 if you want to get this. If not, it's okay. We're just going to go through it here on the channel. So there's 4 indisputable New Testament passages that seem to spell the death knell for unconditional eternal security. There's 4. Taken in context, it's really impossible to interpret these New Testament passages in any other way than one would conclude that unconditional eternal security is unscriptural. I've presented these 4 scriptural passages to adherents in various forums, online and in person, and while some have tried to respond, I've never received an adequate response. And it is rather humorous, even here on YouTube. I've done videos on these particular scriptures we're going to go over, and most of the responses are, well, I can't explain that, but the rest of the Bible. So we've got a lot more than 4 verses in this booklet, but these 4 are going to form the basis, and then we're going to go into some other ones. Only an intense convoluting of Scripture to maintain this doctrine at all costs was presented to me. Now, this not to say that these are only Scriptures that teach against unconditional eternal security, but we're going to look at that. Before we get started, some may ask, why would people feel that Scripture teaches unconditional eternal security? That's a valid question. Whether it's presented analogously as once a son, always a son, or nothing be able to taken from the Father's hand to the power of the vine in John 15, most arguments have been presented, like the prodigal son as well, presented with are arguments of logic and analogy, not the Bible. If unconditional eternal security is not true, then salvation is dependent upon us, not God, many say. And many of you have said that. I would assume some of you watching have responded to that it makes salvation dependent on us and not God. If unconditional eternal security is not true, then I've already said the other evidence presented is similar, logic and analogy. If we're to only look at this evidence for unconditional eternal security, then of course we would find it. Much has to do with our starting point. If we start with the assumption unconditional eternal security is true, then we tend to bend Scripture to fit that belief. We tend to overlook negative scriptures to that doctrine and promote other ones we see through a particular lens, a Weltanschauung. All of us are in danger of doing that on various doctrines. I certainly am. We're all human. That's the importance of objectivity, going wherever the Scripture leads us. We all hopefully want Bible doctrine, not denominational doctrine. What does the Bible teach? Now, the argument could be made that I'm beginning with the starting point of it not being true, so of course I'll fit Scripture to find that narrative. That's why objectivity and love for truth is so important. Bias can distort. I've tried to go into this with an open mind. I read books, Swindoll, Stanley, others, maybe Ironside, I can't remember over the years, Spurgeon, the doctrine of unconditional eternal security. I was raised in a church that believed it. Yet in my dozens of times through Scripture, I found more and more evidence that it simply is not true. So let's look at some of the evidence. So go to page 3 here. The first passage we will examine is found in Romans 13. That great submission to earthly government chapter with limits. That particular discussion is far beyond the realms of this book. Multiple YouTube teachings on this subject. And it reads, this is the first 2 verses. Now, let's put it in context. The book of Romans is in the New Testament. It's an epistle, so it's written to church people. This is just common, rightly dividing the word of truth. I don't know of anybody that really disputes that, if they've got any biblical knowledge at all. It's written to the saints in Rome, first few verses of Romans 1, the last few verses of Romans 16, the last chapter of Romans 16. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there's no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. So God puts up one, puts down another. We tend to get the leaders we deserve. Verse 2, whosoever therefore resisteth the power, this is written to church people, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Damnation. That is eternal apartness from God. They go to hell. They spend eternity in the lake of fire, the second death. And so it's obviously written to Christians because he's already said in Romans, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The wages of sin is death. The gift of God is life eternal. And so obviously this is written to Christians, and he's telling Christians, if you resist the power that God raised up, that you're going to go to hell. Because everybody else, we're all born in sin, shaped in iniquity. We're going to go to hell. So it's obviously talking to people that aren't currently going to hell, that will if they resist the power. There's no other way to interpret it. Now, there's not. Now, I say there's no other way, not properly and not logically at all. So we're going to keep looking at this at another time. You may want to check out our other lessons on unconditional internal security, check out our playlist, and check out our other books. So I love you. God bless. We'll talk with you later. Bye-bye.